Well, Minister of Trade and Industry Park Star and his counterpart from the People's Republic of China, Minister Wang Wentao, have signed the framework agreement on economic partnership for shared prosperity. Tao is currently leading the South African delegation in Beijing, China, for the Joint Economic Trade Commission alongside Wentao. And the minister has joined us this morning to have a quick conversation about this deal. Minister, thank you. We really appreciate you being able to join us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much.
Minister, I know we've got not too much time, so I suppose I'm going to jump straight into it and just ask, what does this agreement entail and what is different to this as opposed to other agreements that we've got in place with China?
Well, essentially, the Chinese government has made an offer, which offer indicates that we would have tariff-free access to the Chinese market, that there'll also be no limits on quotas of products that we would be sending into the Chinese market. So it's a very lucrative offer for South African business that seeks to do trade with the Chinese government. Out of this agreement, we're now working on implementation measures, and those implementation measures would include early harvest initiatives. So what are the first set of products that we can get into the Chinese market? They include investment in industrialization in South Africa. They include agreements on standards and regulations so as to facilitate ease of access into the Chinese market and investment in South Africa. But they also include opportunities for South African companies that wish to establish base in China.
That's a very big thing, because that was one of the biggest concerns in terms of trade and particularly industry in South Africa, South African industry, because sometimes we do see that there is a bit of an imbalance when we talk about undermining local manufacturing here in South Africa in favor of using cheaper manufacturers in China. And we see many industries, unfortunately, suffering a lot because of this. So how do we ensure that we get that trade balance?
There are specific sectors that we've had discussions on this morning, and amongst others would be the automotive industry. You would know that BAIC had committed to establish manufacturing capability in South Africa. They've been assembling in South Africa and have committed that as from this month, they would be manufacturing in South Africa. We also have Cherry that has initiated the process of buying the Nissan plant and establishing a Cherry plant in Pretoria. There are other automotive manufacturers that we're also seeing, and component manufacturers, including in tires that we're seeing today. And this is about Chinese companies that are able to establish base in South Africa and integrate with the local supply chains, ensure that localization happens and that component manufacturers in the country are able to participate. We also had a discussion around steel and related industries, issues in relation to chrome, ferrochrome, issues in relation to smelters that we've lost and the need to rebuild. You would know that China owns Samanco, amongst others. Through Sino-Steel, the Chinese own Samanco, amongst others. And they've also have suffered from the closure of smelters in the country. As we're working with Minister of Electricity and Energy around electricity tariffs, as we're working on measures to support the industry, it was also about encouraging the Chinese to re-establish the capacity that we've lost over time in the country. And they've sent positive signals. They've also extended an invitation for us to look specifically at the steel industry. In fact, they've said tomorrow they are arranging for us to meet some of the steel companies that could have appetite to invest in South Africa. So it's really a partnership that's now looking at not just extracting minerals from South Africa, but about industrializing in South Africa.
So just finally, I know there's just so much more we'd like to dig into, but we will when you get back. I know this is just in the middle of your visit and there's a lot of other meetings planned. But I mean, obviously the agreement emphasizes alignment with the World Trade Organization principles at a time when global trade rules are really under strain. So I suppose it's important to ask this question: how does China see partnerships like this strengthening multilateral trade, but particularly for South Africa's industry?
Well, amongst others, China has indicated that they've made this offer to all African countries, but that free access would be available for least developed countries without the need to have any form of reciprocation. And then we've identified a set of products that we think the Chinese would want to sell into the South African market that are not sensitive in the South African market, so that our own industry is not overwhelmed, so that we are able to comply with World Trade Organization rules in terms of most favored nations protocols that we need to comply to. So that's the first set of issues that we're working on with the Chinese. The second is about the broader multilateral arrangements of the World Trade Organization. We had brief discussions about the upcoming Ministerial Conference 14 that's taking place in Cameroon towards the end of March, at which Ministerial Conference would want to have focus on how we strengthen the World Trade Organization and rebuild its capability so that you create certainty around rules, and in the intermediary period, what mechanisms we can put in place that would govern trade amongst nations.
All right, Minister, we leave it there. Thank you. Good luck with the rest of the trip, and we're hoping that we'll be able to touch base with you once all is concluded and you're back. But obviously, SABC News keeping South Africa updated on this particular deal and more that'll come. That was the Minister of Trade and Industry, Parks Tau, talking to us from Beijing.